As Stephanie mentioned, my name is Nicole. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. This exploration has been quite a labor of love, and I'm very excited to be sharing it with you today. So before we move on, I just want you to take note of the definitions of the word Alma here. They're pretty central to my concept, and in Latin and in Spanish, it means both nourish and soul. So my site for this project is located at the cusp of Point Grey and Kitsilano at the southeast corner of Alma and Broadway. That's about 15 or 20 minutes east of UBC as the crow flies. As you can see from the call out image on the bottom right there, it's currently a temporary, albeit pretty forlorn community garden space. What I'd love you to take away from these graphics is just the sheer concentration of hardscape around my area, which is pretty typical within most urban or residential neighborhoods in Vancouver. But hopefully my garden will provide a bit of a respite or a solution to this. The research phase of this project was pretty extensive. It included multiple site visits and diagrammatic explorations. As you can see, the site is covered in gravel and other aggregate, and it's surrounded by a chain link fence. What I discovered is that there was quite an assault of ambient noise from the surrounding traffic, and that the site was pretty unwelcoming despite being a community garden. So there's a complete lack of vegetation because the site was previously a Chevron gas station, and it's currently in its pre-development or remediation phase, hence the raised beds. What I've also come to understand about this neighborhood is that although the average household income falls pretty high on the index and that the basic hierarchical needs are definitely met, as a generalization anyways, that the rates of stress and anxiety are continually on the rise in Vancouver and in this neighborhood. And, while COVID is, partially to blame for this, I've also kind of surmised that significant overuse and overstimulation of technology takes some of the brunt as well. As such, my garden is meant to provide relief to these issues and eliminate any sort of notions of isolation, anxiety, and contamination. And instead, I'd like to create a dual restoration space that not only welcomes the entire neighborhood, but seeks to remediate the contaminated soil below and any feelings of stress and anxiety above. In a sense, I simply just want to provide nourishment for the land and for the soul. So the process is quite complex and it's twofold. So the first step is a planting scheme of phytoremediation specific plants, which is absolutely critical to the health and the success of this design, but it's also not something that I'm going to dwell on during this presentation. It's just something that's vital to mention. And of course, the second step is planting. So I've implemented a few key elements of restoration theory and sensorial influence of planting throughout the design, honing in on prospect refuge, elements of openness and enclosure, fascination and exploration, and also experiences of touch, color and sound, based on their stress reduction properties and their ability to provide and instill calmness. I drew inspiration from a number of designers and planting schematics, including Pete Odolph, James Hitchmo, and Tom Stewart Smith. Each of them incorporate captivating planting designs that allow the visitor to kind of lose themselves in the fascination of a space. They do this with a clever mixture of ornamental grasses and perennials, maintaining or even beginning with a consideration for winter interest, and allowing for elements of formal gardens such as the trim screen around the perimeter to enclose the space. And these planting schemes going to serve as the backbone for my design because the research states that there are significant benefits to wildness, greenness, and biodiversity when it comes to stress and restoration. So I've also chosen more industrial materials for this palette, including accents of corten steel, limestone, and decomposed granite, which nicely contrast the softness of wood, grasses, and florals. And the iteration process was quite a journey. It helped me delineate my program. I kind of knew from the beginning that I wanted to create an enclosed stroll garden and implement features or planting that both interact with all seasonal elements and provide tactile and auditory experiences. I also knew that I wanted seating for introspection, that I wanted seating for gathering, and that the space was meant to be wild with planting. So I kind of started with 20 different sketches and plan, a few perspective of moments in time that I envisioned, different variations in grading and other sensory experiences that I might evoke. And then from those designs, I iterated further with line work to get a better understanding of space and scale. As is the way with design, it took me about 6 tries or more to get it right. And you can also see in this variation or these variations that I've incorporated secondary stepping stone paths in addition to a water feature in the gathering areas, both of which have become kind of pivotal moments in my design. And this brings us to the final site plan, which in the next slide is a bit scaled up for some nitty-gritty details. And the elements include a beaten path, solo seating areas, a watering hole, windows for viewing in, and pan drums that play with the raindrops next to those windows. There's also significant canopy that connects each side, but also vertically with shrubs and grasses for stratification to keep the corridor kind of diverse with songbirds and wildlife. This is the first section that spans north to south, and it gives what I hope to be a quite vibrant and emotive experience. I've also kind of considered evergreen climbers on the east wall, cypress trees at the entrance that support wayfinding through the tall grasses, and planter boxes at each entrance that evoke the materiality of the palette and the planting palette within. This section spans east to west and is more level than the last, but has the same kind of cohesive planting and gathering areas. You can see the viewing window a bit better, which is meant to invite people on the outside in and amplify the sounds of wildness around those areas. I mentioned earlier that I wanted a design that had both summer and winter interest, and I believe this isometric visualization kind of speaks to the qualities of summer. During this time period, there's ample sun on site, and the canopy is perfect for those shady moments. Whereas, naturally, I'm following this with the winter scene, where the backbones of the garden, such as the evergreen screen, trees, shrubs, and grasses, and the elements of fascination, gathering, introspection, locomotion, and the sensorial healing elements, they still remain. And then finally, we have some diagrammatic explorations of the planting practices and theories that I discussed earlier, which shows you exactly how I intend for them to happen and where, such as refuge, fascination, or tactile experiences, just to name a few. And this is the planting palette that I've attempted to accomplish that with throughout. And for me, that culminates in this visualization, which is kind of all of those experiences that I'd like to see in the space in one. And that's all she wrote. Thank you.